the situation now a third day running where the aid is not getting through. All right, we'll try to bring you that report.
Pictures released by the Israeli military show trucks lined up on the border with Gaza, some of 93, it says, it allowed into the enclave on Tuesday to distribute aid. But the United Nations said that none of the aid that got through had been distributed. The trucks were carrying flour for bakeries, food for soup kitchens, medical supplies and baby food, the latter of which the UN has been prioritising in the first shipments. But one British surgeon working in Gaza says the situation couldn't be any more urgent.
Because of the blockade, there's so little stuff getting in. There's no food getting in, so people are starving. There's very little medical supplies coming in. But also the other very noticeable thing is the massive extent of destruction. I mean, Khan Younis looks like Stalingrad.
There was no let-up in bombardments, with explosions above the territory visible on Tuesday night. Gaza's civil defence said 19 people were killed in airstrikes. Israel's offensive and its 11-week blockade have earned it a rare rebuke from some of its Western allies, including France, the UK and Canada. While 17 of 27 EU member states on Tuesday backed a Dutch proposal to review ties with Israel. Experts have warned of a risk of famine in Gaza if aid does not get to vulnerable populations, while the United Nations said up to 14,000 babies in the territory could die in the next 48 hours.
Now, in that report, you saw Dr. Tom Potokar, who's a surgeon with the Ideals charity. He joins us live from the southern Gaza city of Khan Younis. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Yes, good evening.
You work at the Al Amal Hospital, and we've been in a week where hospitals have been targeted. Tell me about the situation where you are.
So the situation here is there's been bombardment going on all day around the hospital in the vicinity, some very close. There was one blast earlier on this afternoon, very close. The emergency department then filled up with patients being rushed in, or two children, very young children, who were brought in, one with a head injury and a broken arm, and the other one also with head injuries, and some adults as well with extensive lower limb injuries. We've been operating this morning, doing the typical sort of cases that are the result of this kind of conflict scenario of use of high explosives in highly built up, dense urban areas.
Yeah, and in Khan Younis, where you are, there had been these evacuation orders earlier in the week. What's happened since then?
So yes, those evacuation orders came on Tuesday, I think it was, and for a very large area of Khan Younis and a large part of the city. In fact, the evacuation, it's by sectors, so the region is divided into sectors, and that comes right up to the front of the hospital. So many people left from those areas. Many of my colleagues who are working here, the nurses, the surgeons, many of them lived in those areas, so had to get back to their homes as rapidly as possible to try and get their families out, to move out. And they've all headed to different parts, I mean, towards the west, towards Al-Mawasi, but as we know very clearly, that is not safe either. And there are literally thousands and thousands of people living there in tents, just all cramped together in not very hygienic conditions. So, lots and lots of people have left. Which means then that then since then there's been a fairly regular bombardment. Started today at about 5 in the morning, and it's going on pretty much all day.
And how are you able to work? How is your charity able to get its supplies in? How are you able to get enough food even for your staff?
Well, our staff, I don't know how they manage. They've certainly lost a lot of weight, that's for sure. Colleagues that I've known for a long time. For ourselves, we have to bring in all the food we need for a month, which obviously fills up most of the sort of baggage that we're able to bring in. For the medical supplies, I mean, fortunately, they are not, certainly in this hospital, they're not yet running out. But this is not necessarily because there's an oversupply or anything of medical supplies. It's just because so many hospitals are now out of action. So, for example, I was at the European Gaza last week, and that was evacuated and is no longer in service. But some of my Palestinian colleagues who were working there, they went back the next day at enormous risk to try and get equipment, get medical supplies out of that hospital and bring them to this hospital. And they were able to bring some stuff. But we also saw the day before yesterday, there was a significant action between our hospital here and Nasser Hospital. We're only about 700 meters apart. And the main storage part of the hospital in Nasser was hit. Had a lot of WHO medical items in there. So obviously those are no longer available. It's very much a case of day by day.
Nasser Hospital, the Indonesian hospital, last week the European hospital. How do you explain it?
I can't really. I can't explain it. I mean, it's yes, we've seen it throughout the course of this war. Back, I'm sure viewers will remember the Shifa Hospital. In the early days, as you say, so many hospitals now out of action. The Indonesian hospital was besieged this week, and they strikes within the compound of the European Gaza hospital that put it out of action. I can't explain it.
The aid that's been held up with the intense bombardment that you're describing, it sounds logical that it's not able to get in.
Sorry, there was just quite a loud bombardment there, so I didn't actually hear your question. If you could say it
I'm
again.
saying with the airstrikes continuing on such a regular basis, it's understandable that the aid is not getting in. How can you deliver aid in these circumstances?
Well, there are systems to do that, and up until the blockade was in place, things were coming in, and there is this is not the only place in the world that is in a conflict scenario, and there are organizations and the United Nations and all sorts of other, the International Committee of the Red Cross, MSF, lots of organizations that are extremely experienced in this type of environment, and the whole setup to be able to deliver supplies has been here for a long time and has functioned well. The only reason it can't function at the moment is because it's blocked at the border.
Blocked at the border. And Tom Potokar, at this point in time, is this week where we've had deaths by the dozens every day, is it the worst week of the war?
I don't know statistically. I mean, it's not dozens, it's more like hundreds, to be honest. But whether it's the worst, I don't know. It's certainly very, very bad at the moment, and has been for some time, with absolutely no signs whatsoever of it letting up at all.
The Israeli government's pushed for the population to leave. How do your Palestinian colleagues there feel about that?
Well, many of them have already evacuated multiple times, some colleagues up to 10 times. And, they get told to evacuate from one area to go to somewhere else that is designated safe area, only to find out that it's not safe. And then they get ordered to move from there to go somewhere else. So, when this happens multiple times, you can imagine the psychological stress as well, and just the general weariness of this way of living where you're constantly moved from one place to another. And, as has been said umpteen times by umpteen people, there is nowhere safe in Gaza. Nowhere.
Tom Potokar, many thanks for speaking with us from Khan Younis.